another biblical question here with Richard in the UK talking about, did an historical Jesus exist? So we're talking about the ontology of an historical Jesus. Richard, how are you doing?
I'm good. Hello, chaps. How are you?
Better now.
How you doing?
Okay, so I'm going to be honest with you. I nicked this question from somebody in the chat who didn't want to call in, and
come on, chat person.
I've never heard you two actually speak on this, so I thought it'd be interesting to get your perspective on it. So that's it, really. Did a historical Jesus exist?
We can't know. I'm gonna say I'm not a mythicist. Me and Matt did a show. We kind of talked about this at the beginning, and I guess I'm similar to his position in that I'm not a mythicist. I can't claim that there was no historical Jesus. I just don't. I think the lack of contemporary evidence and I'd say the evidence surrounding it is not great. It's all, it all pertains back to, non-contemporary sources, which for me that's if someone points out, well, what about this historical figure that has kind of the same attestation, but we think that person's real? I just go, well, if I find out that person's not real, it doesn't affect me in any way that if Jesus is real and is the Son of God or something, right? So, but even if we strip the Son of God part away, it's just, I don't know how you would be confident in that attestation, I guess is my position.
Yeah, and I would say I generally agree with that. I don't have any objection to the idea that there was an historical Jesus, that there was some rabbi with followers talking about loving your neighbor and whatnot. Sure, why not? Do I have any reason to think that whoever the historical Jesus is the individual described in the Gospels? No. Do I have any reason to think he walked on water or turned water into wine or raised people from the dead? Nope. So if there was an historical Jesus, I don't really know anything about who that person was. Would be my standpoint. I find that the question of if there was an historical Jesus typically has very little to do with
the actual
Jesus person that people are talking about when they're talking about Jesus.
So Kenneth, would you say that
talking about as a Bible character?
Yeah, would you say that Bible character, like you? Because actually, it brings a good point. Would you? Because if you're going to say that Jesus, I'm going to say firmly that one does not exist, and you would presumably say the same.
I have no reason to think that character was a real person, or that the events described in the Bible actually happened. None. And the same thing could be said of like an historical Moses. I have no reason to think that that any of that shit happened. So this would be my position with respect to many biblical figures.
I think it comes down to like what's more rational, and it seems to be not accepting the positive belief.
And what I find is that people who typically want to talk about an historical Jesus, they're trying very, very hard to establish some sort of like foundation that they can then start building claims on. Well, we know there was some real guy. Okay. And then they got all their work ahead of them.
Satya Sai Baba was a real guy.
I was actually going to ask you that next. If you think when Christians make that claim, they're using it as a kind of stepping stone to the supernatural claims about Jesus.
I get that. I get that a lot. And the problem I have is, it'd almost be weird for me in one sense to think of it like, if there's a religion that focuses on a central figure and that central figure doesn't exist, that seems a little strange in itself, right? Like, of course religions start, of course people make things up, but to say that like the figure didn't exist, like, yeah, sure, there's nothing like illogical about it or something, but it does seem like it would make sense for it to source back to some, it's like saying, if like you had, and maybe the guy if you look into chiropractic work and look at kind of the guy that invented that, right? And you just were to say like, yeah, we found out this guy existed, say 2,000 years from now. Like, it doesn't add validity to the claim that what he was professing about chiropractic work has like some validity in the world, right? I mean, that's just two separate claims. So I almost hate when mythicists want to attack the figure part, because kind of like with the last caller, you have someone's presenting to you something that's doing its own damage. Like, they think that this guy rose from the dead, and then they also think that if a guy rose from the dead, it entails Yahweh existed, which I don't see a logical contradiction, and aliens just raising up Jesus, right? There's still all these little crevices that they have to fill in. I'd rather just say, yep, Jesus existed, and prove the divinity, because that to me, that makes my mouth water, knowing that the claim is so easily defeatable. Like, but
in recent months, what I've been doing with people when they want to talk about an historical Jesus, they'll talk about extra biblical sources. They'll talk about Josephus or Tacitus, or these people making reference to people following a figure called Jesus, or a Jesus, brother of James, this kind of stuff. And none of this doesn't get us any closer to any of the gospel claims being true. So the one that I like to ask people about lately is I'll just ask them about, okay, there's a story in the Bible that Jesus went to a wedding and turned water into wine. Do we have any reason to think that any of the individual elements of this particular story are true? Can you give me anything that is evidence that Jesus turned water into wine, other than a book says a thing? And there's nothing. There is nothing. And this is true for all of the stories in the Gospels about Jesus. So, I try not to just go straight for the resurrection, because I would like for people to start thinking. And when I go straight to like the biggest alleged miracle that's in there, the mind is generally pretty closed when I'm dealing with believers. But I've been finding a little bit of success with getting people to go like, okay, well, I guess we don't really know if that happened. And once we get there, we can start having big conversations about the bigger claims. So, yeah.
Yeah, with the
brilliant.
bigger claim.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Richard.
Go on, Mike, sorry. No,
I was just saying with the big we got ourselves lost here. No, I was just saying with the bigger claims, on that front, I always try to run, like, if we get to kind of where Kenneth is saying, once you do get to the resurrection part, and it all comes down to the evidentiary basis, quote unquote, is just saying that it says so in this book. And maybe people might cite like Paul's letters or things like with 500 witnesses or something, right? They might cite these things, but they're all predicated back to the claim of the book. And my thing is always to go, like, if you're the person that you trusted, right? Like your wife or someone like that tells you, that she saw the risen Tupac or Elvis or something. It's like, you're not going to just accept that claim. And that's like the most trusted person, but you trust Paul, like the writings of Paul from like 2,000 years ago that you're removed from the events, but you'd call your wife like a lunatic for saying like, I saw the risen Tupac, I saw the risen Elvis, like I watched it happen, like, right. So if you finally get to that step, I feel like if you get there, I mean, it's like, you should point out the absurdity pretty obviously there for me, at least. It's just, you don't accept this from credible sources, but this person you've never met is somehow more credible than your wife that you actually know. Okay. Got it. Cool. I wonder how she feels about it, but yeah. So,
but yeah, hopefully that shines some light there, Richard, on our positions with respect to the historical Jesus.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Have a good weekend. Yeah, it's an interesting, it is an interesting question. And I'm not a mythicist either. I find myself having to separate whatever people are saying about an historical Jesus from the Jesus they're actually talking about. Because it's never been the same thing in any conversation I've ever had on the subject.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to waste time talking about whether or not someone existed, as opposed to like, no, you're making metaphysical claims about reality that are attributed to this guy.
Right.
Okay. So
Making specific claims about things this person allegedly did.
yeah. So
Right.
I'd grant you the first stepping stone. He existed. I'll even say 100%, just so that you don't have any issue going forward of like, but do you doubt Jesus? No. I'm with you on the existence of Jesus. Now get me to it matters, because I believe Satya Sai Baba existed. Didn't mean that the claims of miracles that he professed were actually true. It's a secondary investigation. But
he did have a sweet haircut, though.